exhausted, I feel burnt out, why am I even doing this? The money's not worth it, you have to separate yourself from your wants and your needs to, like you said, if you want to get somewhere, you have to do things consistently. I have a few different versions of myself that I would like to eventually get to.
Beyond the mirror, reflections of lives beyond the glass. Hello everyone and welcome to Beyond the Mirror. This is the new podcast or new little series I'm going to be doing in my YouTube channel about dancers, where we're going to be picking their brains and knowing who they are and what makes them. And today we have our first guest, Jenavieve Hernandez.
Hello everybody.
Welcome to this new section. Thank you for
having me.
Yeah, thank you for being the first guest.
Yes, of course.
So, can you just tell us a little bit about what do you do and who you are? Just in a little simple words. Where did you grow up? How old are you?
Currently, I am 22 years old. My birthday is coming up, the dreadful 23. We all age, I know, but it's coming up quick, so I'm thinking about it. I originally grew up in Spokane, Washington, and then moved to Idaho around the age of 9. And then from 9 to 18, I grew up, went to high school and junior high and all of that in Idaho. So,
where did you start dancing?
I originally started dancing with Ballet Spokane at the time. It was a teeny tiny little company that I first took classes there because they were free because my mom was in the company.
Oh.
So it was much more reasonable for her to be putting me in free ballet classes while she was in rehearsal than it was for
daycare or
her to have to pay for me to been watched by someone. So she just stuck me in dance classes. So
that is good.
Yes.
How old were you?
I believe I was 3 when I first started.
So super young.
Yes, yeah.
Sometimes it's hard for me to believe when people say, oh, I started when I was 3. It's you barely remember what you were doing.
Exactly. Well, and that's the thing when people are like, so how long have you been dancing? Technically speaking, my answer would be almost 20 years. But in actuality, when did you start taking dance seriously enough to consider a career? Mm-hmm. I would probably say around the age of 12 or 13.
12 or 13.
Yeah.
That is good.
Yeah.
I don't know what is relevant because I'm from Colombia, so I don't know what is the grade compared to me. Mm-hmm. But I was in 4th or 5th year of ballet.
Yeah.
Where I was oh, I can do this as a career. Did you have that moment like that when you're I want to make this my life? Or because also you have your mom who also was a dancer. Mm-hmm. Do you have that? How do you say? I forgot the word. Pressure, or
yes.
do you have to be like your mom?
That's a good question. I think about that quite a bit, actually. I don't think I never felt pressured to be a dancer or to take dance classes. I think it came really naturally to me. I think it really influenced me being able to not only see performances like a lot of people who don't have parents or anything that were dancers. For me, I got the whole package. I got the experience of watching my mom perform on stage from the audience, but I also got the dress rehearsals. I got to be in the green room.
Backstage.
I got to be backstage. I got to meet all of the other artists that they were working with. I also got to my mom would work daytime jobs, so normal 9 to 5, and then after that she'd pick me up from school, and then we would go to the studio, and she would rehearse till 9 or 10 every night.
Wow.
So I was sitting in the corner of a studio for, however many hours that is every evening, about 5 to 6 days a week. So it was kind of just natural for me, I think, to fall into it, and I kind of just fell in love with the community aspect of it and seeing the way my mom got to partner with her best friends and then their friendship outside of the studio and then seeing it on stage as well. It was really cool. So I think that's what made me fall in love with it. But
that is very, very exciting. Also, your mom sounds like she'd really sacrificed a lot.
Yes, very much so. She was a single mom since I was about 3. So it was just me and her for the first 9 to 10 years of my life, but the entire time that we lived in Spokane while she was dancing professionally there, working her 9 to 5 and then rehearsing 6 days a week, it was just me and her.
Wow.
So yeah, lots of PB&Js, lots of little things like that, but I don't know, I don't think I would have wanted it any other way. So
No, but props to her, because sometimes I feel like that gets, like, how to say, little compared to other people, but it's like, if it wasn't for your mom, you wouldn't be here. Like,
No,
you wouldn't be sharing all this
exactly.
heart, and like, thank you for sacrificing all this time too.
yeah.
Do you have like a person, like a dancer that you aspire to be, or like somebody that you're like, oh wow, I wish I could be like them, or something,
I have an interesting story about that, actually. So growing up, I had a few different teachers like that. I never really idolized any professional dancers. There were some, like Paloma Herrera, things like that I was like, oh my gosh, this is my end-all be-all. This is the goal. But as I got older, I feel like I connected more with the people that were more consistently in my dance training life. So like my teachers.
You're there today. Yeah.
My teachers became really big inspiration for me. Two of which, Adrienne Kerr, she's a professional dancer, principal dancer with Ballet Idaho.
Okay.
She was a ballet teacher of mine and a jazz teacher of mine
Growing
growing up. And she just had a way with the way that she structured her classes and the way that she spoke to us inside and outside of class, that was very much like, if you want to do this, these are the things you need to do to accomplish that, but was also very good at guiding us in that direction without being too, I don't want to use the word scary, but scary and overbearing,
pushy,
as some ballet teachers can be. So she was incredible in that aspect, and like growing up, getting to see her rehearse in company rehearsals and things like that was really inspiring as well. One other teacher who really inspired me growing up, we had an interesting thing where she was a contemporary teacher, and I got introduced to contemporary around the age of 13, I think, 12, 13, and I can without a doubt say that my introduction to her as a dancer has changed my life as an artist and as a dancer, as a person in general. Like, I can't even put into words, like, the way that she would teach classes and talk about, like, sharing of energy between people and, like, the audience and the performer. Just that perspective really changed how I dance and how I view dance. So
that is very exciting.
Yeah.
For me, contemporary and all these modern things have always scared me.
Really?
Yes, like since I was a little kid, since I was in school, the first thing I have to take contemporary was like, no. Like,
why is that?
I don't know, I was always afraid of it. Maybe people would make fun of me because I was awkward or something like that. And by the time I still wasn't really fully into ballet, or like I didn't see this as my life. So when we went into contemporary, we have to do it, I felt like the most horrible person, like the most horrible dancer. I hated it. Now I'm kind of starting to love it, but I still know like something that, I want to do modern, or like I rather to stick more to like classical ballet.
It's the passion.
Yes, it's the intensity.
No, I understand. I feel like I remember being very intimidated at first, because the only thing that you see initially when you're trying a new genre of dance specifically, or in my experience, has been like, oh my God, I just see like the best people in the room for some reason. We compare ourselves automatically to the best of the room, when in reality, like, a lot of these people have been doing this, one genre of dance for many, many, many more years than I have, or I had at the time. And so it was very, like, I also had to get over that scary, like, hump of, like, oh my gosh, what if I embarrass myself? Or, like, the thought of being able to release my body, because as you know, in ballet, everything is, like, pulled up, center yourself, pull yourself into the ground, but also we're mainly up here. Whereas like in contemporary and modern, it was like my first experience being able to like have an undercurve or an overcurve with my body, and like use my plie in different ways and all of these different things. And so I think because it was so foreign to me, I was scared of it. But that's why, I don't know, I think I had a really unique experience with this teacher. She just really was like, okay, like, we're going to turn the lights off. Everybody's just going to take 5 minutes at the end of class to improv on their own. No one's looking at you. Like, she created a very safe space
that is very interesting.
for exploration, because she knew that most of us were bunheads from the beginning. So
that's crazy. That is another thing that I don't like, improvisation. I'm terrified of improvisation. Like, I remember when I was in the school and they will be like, okay, now 20 seconds of impro, like, do it. I would be like, blank, 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 blank. Like, it was terrifying for me. And like, there was one, I had this summer program in Connecticut. I didn't speak any English, nothing. And the audition for it was like, okay, now that we did everything, you're gonna have 2 minutes of improvisation. And then you see all these kids, amazing, doing everything. And I was in the middle of the room like this, completely frozen. I had such a vivid moment of that. I'm like, oh, never again.
See, and that's like, oh, I relate to that so much, because there were a few summer dance camps. I never got the opportunity to go off to like any really big ballet dance camps, just because it was a bit too expensive for me at the time, as you probably know.
Yes.
But there were a few contemporary based dance camps that were like 2 weeks long that I would go to in the summertime. And the first year that I went, I think I was 14 at the time, 14, 15, but very much still just getting into contemporary modern movement. And I remember the first day we get there, and of course it's all these comp dancers too. And so they they have the drama, they have the tricks, they have the legs up, down, all over the place, you know. And so that was a similar thing where one of the teachers was like, okay, and we're going to improv, you know, for 2 minutes. And then after that, we're going to learn about contact improv and, you know, partnering with people. And the word improv scared me enough. And then to hear contact improv, I was like, oh my gosh, like freaking out as a 14-year-old, you know, insecure, trying to gain confidence, you know, putting myself out there. But I remember like, there were just so many different types of improvisation that I got to witness during not only that first day, but those 2 weeks of camp, that it really opened my eyes up to like what it means to improv, and then just like dancing in general. Like my teacher would always be like, some people consider improvisation or certain types of contemporary or modern as ugly, and they don't see it the way that maybe it could be perceived at. But I think that's because sometimes we get so closed-minded on like
hello,
the lines.
This is the pirouette.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. And so she really encouraged us to be weird. And like I had never had a dance teacher or a dancer brave enough to like be like, no, like be weird. Like if it's ugly,
let it be ugly.
Let it be ugly, because that's just a part of the process. And like her learning that and then being able to release that, like, oh, I can be weird, like, or I can mess up and it can become a part of the choreography and stuff like that. It really changed the way that I viewed myself as a mover. Because, you know, we're really hard on ourselves, especially growing up. Like,
so hard.
And for the first however many years of my life doing ballet, it was all about being perfect, being lifted, getting your technique a certain way, you know. And of course, you're comparing yourself to others around you.
To the top of the class who have all the facilities in their bodies and everything.
Not to mention maybe the money, you know. Yes. Like like when you're young, you don't understand necessarily that there's politics that go into these things.
There is a lot of things.
There's a lot of things. There's, you know, and maybe not even that, but like if your parents can afford to buy you new point shoes every 2 weeks versus you needing to make your point shoes last 2 months, it's not your fault. Like,
no.
Having dead shoes doesn't make you a bad dancer is ultimately what I learned.
Yes, no.
Yeah, so.
It's just, it's hard not to compare ourselves with everything. And like, right now we live in the age of social media where you can compare yourself to everything every 24 seconds. Like, it's insane. So it's kind of like, how can you detach that, but also make it part of you, but without judging you? It's so hard.
And of course, there's a lot of like, for me anyways, back and forth of like seeing incredible things on social media and whatnot, and being inspired by that. But then at the same time, and this is a part of myself that I've been working on a lot lately, but like my ego, I've been like, okay,
shutters.
why is this making me feel the way it is, negatively, specifically? And then why do I feel like, because sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes I see these things and I'm like, great, she just did 15 pirouettes in her living room. And I'm like, okay, well, that's enough for me today. Like, I don't know what to do from there. And I just kind of get angry almost. And it's not their fault, but it's like when you're on social media, you're saying the best thing after the best thing after the best thing. And so immediately I go back to 14-year-old, 13-year-old me, and I'm comparing myself. And that's when I'm like, put the phone away for the day, you know?
Yes. It's hard, but we have to. And like we have to also understand that we are just seeing the highlights of people.
Yes,
we are not seeing the sacrifice and everything else that comes with it. And some people are naturally born and they can do that without even thinking. But some people have worked hard, and I wish we see also a little bit of that as well. Like they don't just show us like, okay, here it is me looking at this perfectly.
Yes,
without us showing that you already sacrificed 13 years of your life, breaking your leg, putting it, you know what I mean? Like I wish I see a little bit more of that.
Like, what does the recovery look like? What is your, I don't know, meal preps look like? What is all the extra time that you do in and out of the studio? Because like we do those things as well, but when you just see the end product, it's like, oh my gosh. And sometimes I forget that it probably took so long for them to get to that point. But you're right, it would be like very refreshing to see, you know,
also
all of
now
it.
that we're talking about that, what do you do after? Like, let's say, talk us about through your day. Like, what do you eat? What do you go through? Like, what?
Okay.
Let's see.
So it's actually funny that you ask me about the eating thing, because I have very kind of a ritualistic thing that I do mostly every day. Depends on if my dishes are not dirty and if what I want to wash for the day. But so typically I'll wake up in the morning. I feel pretty fortunate that we don't start till 10:30. It gives me enough time in the morning to like wake up, take my moment, you know, if I need to, you know, journal or whatever first thing in the morning. I try to like do something for myself immediately rather than just get on my phone, because I found that I have formed the habit of waking up and scrolling.
Checking into Instagram. Totally.
So more recently, and this has only been within like the last 3 weeks to a month, I've been trying to wake up and like journal or just like take a moment and stretch first thing, just, even if it's in my bed. So I'll do that for about, 5 to 10 minutes. I get up, I do all the normal things, brush my teeth, wake up, rub my eyes, get all the crusties out. And then usually immediately after that, I just start prepping for my day. So shower or not, depends on the night before. And then food-wise, very ritualistically, I will usually do like 2 fried eggs in the morning, just because I like the way it makes me feel. It's light, but it's also like protein right off the bat. I always make myself a smoothie. I always have a big thing of coffee that I take to class. And that's about it for very first thing in the morning. Sometimes I'll do like oatmeal or something like that if I want to change it up. But recently and pretty consistently for like the last 9 months, it's been like 2 eggs every morning. Very simple. And I told my mom that recently, and she's like, that's really funny, because I literally used to do the exact same thing. And I was like,
it's genetic.
Like mother, like daughter. Yes. But so that's usually like funny. Breakfast, and by the time I make my food and I take my time getting ready for dance, I do the thing where I'm like, what leotard should I wear today? Because I want to feel good for the day. I find that if I like have to rush in the morning and I don't feel put together by the time I leave,
it doesn't go as well.
It doesn't go as well during the day. And I know that might sound like,
no,
I don't know. We're in front of a mirror all day, and that's a whole nother thing, but it makes me feel really good when at least like my hair is done, I am wearing something that I feel comfortable in, whatever that may be for the day. That really helps me to get through.
Just to put a little note,
the day.
That's kind of why we named this Beyond the Mirror, because it literally, you stare at yourself 24/7. And it's kind of like one of the only jobs where you look at yourself all the time. You know what? I don't know what that does to you psychologically.
I would love someone to do a study.
Because it's definitely something that you're like, what? So, but anyways, let's keep going. So then you get to the studio.
So these days I used to be really bad about this. But this year I've been trying to get to the studio anywhere from like an hour to 30 minutes early, just so I have time. I really like being one of the first people there, just because it gives me time to do all my
Whatever
weird
you
little
need.
warm-ups. Yeah, and like, you know, we all get to class and we all do our own thing, but for some reason there's still kind of this, I'm finding my confidence, and that's a whole another thing about dance. But with things like warm-ups and stuff like that, sometimes I feel good just having my headphones in, turning towards the wall, and knowing that I can just do all my weird, like, wiggly things without anybody else being there. So usually get there about an hour to, half hour early, warm up. I do all my TheraBand exercises. Lately, I've been trying to do a headstand a day because I think it's kind of important to be upside down.
That's
for a
interesting.
little bit every day.
Why?
It gives
To
me a little
get the
bit.
rush?
I guess maybe. I feel like it gives me a little bit of perspective, as cheesy as that sounds, like turning your world upside down for 3 minutes or 2 minutes a day. Not only that, but it also warms up my upper body.
I like the, how do you say, looking at the other way, like having another perspective, kind of like putting yourself in another shoes. I like that.
And like when I'm in the studio, it's the same thing, just flipped. But like sometimes, like after class, I'll go for a walk, or not after class, after rehearsal, I'll go for a walk and go headstand in the park, and then that's like my 3 minutes a day or whatever. I got inspired to do this actually from Sophia. Sophia Maria.
Sophia Maria. Yeah.
Yes. Just because a few years ago she taught me how to do headstands, and I've been on that journey ever since. But so I'll do my weird little warm-ups like that, and then class starts. We usually have like an hour and a half class, warm up, do all I can to get my toes warm, my calves loose. Half hour lunch. These days I'm really bad about prepping lunch, but when I do, it's usually like I'll bring a super carb dense lunch, so like pasta or something like that, because the way my body works, I need the carbs. Otherwise, I start to crash and my mood goes down with it during the day. So I find that if I eat carbs for lunch, or at least for breakfast or lunch, somewhere in between, it makes the day go by so much better for me. So
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
For me, it's quite the opposite. I feel like the least I eat, the better I dance.
Really? See, and it's not, I relate to that somewhat. Like, I won't have a ton of food, but I need that just for my energy, because I feel like I've always kind of had weird blood sugar things where if my blood sugar goes down,
you
I
go
just,
down. Yeah.
and I start to get really shaky and fatigued, and then it's just bad news for everybody, so I can't risk that anymore. So it's either that, or like I'll do like my hummus, my pita chips, carrots, fruits, just light things that make me feel good during the day.
Little things, snacky things.
And I think people don't realize that, like, when you're, they probably know this, but they probably don't think of it. But when you're dancing, like, you can't really eat a massive meal in the middle of the day. Otherwise, you're like,
You're gonna vomit right there.
Yeah, you don't want to do that for your partners, for the people in the studio. So it took me a while to find the balance between, like, feeding myself enough to get through the day and then not overeating.
Yep.
Just because then you can't dance, or you don't feel good dancing, So then after lunch, we do like our, hours of rehearsal. Usually get done around 4. After this week, I'll have to stay after to teach, so my schedule will probably look a little different. But recently, I've just been leaving the studio. I walk home. I do like my chores that I need to, or whatever, little house things. And then I try to do an ice bucket for my feet at least every day.
That's very good. I've been trying that lately, and it's been changing my life.
It's incredible. And I wish, it sounds stupid, because it's like, I knew that doing these things for my body would help. But in the past, it's like getting over the pain of having to ice your feet every day. But now that I'm doing it consistently, it's like
nothing.
It's easy, yeah. But it makes such an incredible difference. I'm like, my feet can fit in my point shoes the next day, you know?
This is also for younger dancers, and I feel like I was that, because when you're young, your body recovers easily.
So quickly.
And everything, and it's the opposite. The more you do younger, the longer you're gonna last. So you don't have to end your career suddenly because you cannot recover from this injury. So please, do the things that your PT tells you. Do the things that you have to do, eyes, recovery, those exercises, I know sometimes it's annoying and you are like, I don't need them, I'm okay. But then when you get older and when you start having recurrent injuries, you are like, I wish I had done it earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Exactly.
And like, people tell us before, but you don't listen, so please listen.
Yeah,
But-
no, I would have teachers who would tell us all the time, you know, go home, even if you're stretching after class for like, you know, 10 to 20 minutes, even if it's that much. That little, when you're younger, that's enough because the recovery time for your body is much, much smaller and you can just bounce back. But I feel like if I would have listened and started doing those things more consistently when I was younger, I would be in a better habit forming. I don't know. I would just be
Yes.
better at forming those habits now and being able to like work with my body a little more. But it's been that I'm now discovering the things that I need to do for my body. That's the other thing. It's different for everybody.
It's different. It's self-discovery.
It is, yeah. And it's like, well, of course you self-discover as you get older. But like, it's different, you know, just growing older and then being a dancer and athlete and having to be so in tune with your physical body and your physical self. Like, of course I knew that those things were related when I was younger, but I was like, you know,
fine.
I'll be in class tomorrow. It'll be fine. I'll
Yeah.
be stretching then or whatever. So,
Yes, I'll do it then. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I totally relate to that because it happens to me all the time. And yeah, it's kind of like, oh yeah, when you get older, you should like identify yourself better. But sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you have to find yourself as well. Because if you don't search for that, it's not gonna come to you. It's kind of like when you have dreams and you are like, oh, I wanna be a billionaire. Let's put an example. But you sit down every single day and you don't put one step a day. You're never gonna be a billionaire. It's not gonna come to you.
exactly.
So the same thing goes to finding yourself. You have to put a little bit of like, why am I doing this? Why this helps? Why this doesn't? So then you actually evaluate and you can grow.
Exactly.
It's not within you.
And that's the thing too, is like, once again, I feel like I knew those things, but I feel like when you're younger, it's hard to see that you will get older and that the years will pass and you will, you know, eventually get to a place where you do need to have these habits so that you can continue with this career if it's something that you're really serious about. But I never was like that. And so now I really am very much so discovering myself and like what works for my body and whatnot. And let me tell you, it is not linear. It is all over the place. Like 1 week I'll be super on top of all of my stuff and all of my recovery and rolling out every night, stretching, doing this, that, and the other that I know is good for me and will prepare my body for the day or the next day or whatever. And then the next week comes around and I'm exhausted. And so it changes. And don't feel bad about it changing if it does. Because it's just nothing in life is that consistent. So.
Nothing is consistent. I like that. Give me 1 second. We have to fix the cameras.
Oh.
I wanted to go back to how do you identify more with ballet, contemporary, modern, tap, jazz? What does you identify the best with?
See, that's interesting as well. I feel like actually, I don't know. I don't want to project this on anybody, but some people I feel like really identify with one form of dance. Some days I am so bunhead. Some days I am like, I'm here for class. I feel like ballerina today. I am excited to be, you know, able to embody this thing that is a ballerina. And other days, I totally reject that. And I'm like, I don't want to put tights on. I don't want to put a leotard on. I would so much rather just take this entire ballet class in socks, you know, and like do those things. But I don't know. I feel like it depends on the day. When I was first discovering contemporary, I felt this is so cheesy, but truly, when you fall in love with someone for the first time, you know how you have your honeymoon phase.
Like everything.
That's how it was with me in contemporary. I fell in love with this new form of dance because I had never been introduced to it before, and it like overtook my brain for, I want to say like a good portion of, I don't know, my junior high to high school life. Like I was very much focused on ballet, but that's because I had always been. Whereas because I had this new thing introduced to me, that kind of overtook my brain in the best way possible. It's what's led me to be the dancer I am now. But I don't know that I really identify with any
of them.
Yeah, because I want to be good at it all. Like, and I love tap dancing, and I think that's something that not a lot of people know that.
No.
But when I was younger, I was, not to brag, but I think I was a fairly good tap dancer and was always put with like I remember, I think I was maybe 12 or 13, and I got moved up to the tap class with the 17, 18, 16-year-olds.
Wow.
Because they were like, well, she's not doing step taps anymore, like, and so that's another, little thing that I loved.
Idea.
I love tap.
See you talking about tap dancing.
I love tap. I don't know. It's just so fun. It's like
it's a very interesting art form. I love it.
It is, yeah.
I love to see it, but I love when people are so connected to the song and the rhythm that you are like, how is that possible? This person is hearing all these steps in the same rhythm.
And the fact that you bring that up is actually really significant, because I think, to answer your question, I identify more with music than I do with dance as a whole. And I feel like it took me a long time to realize that about myself, but I think a lot of the reason why I dance is, of course, the feeling of movement, and like intrinsically I've always just felt like expressing myself by moving my body, but I feel like a lot of it has been inspired by music. And like just a lot of the reason that I get through the day is the music we get to dance to. Yes. And like that, plus what I mentioned in the very beginning, is the community aspect. I love being on stage with people, and I love being on stage for people as well. And like that transfer of energy is so necessary for me to be able to do what I do. That's why COVID was so hard.
Yeah.
Not to bring it up, but that's why it was so hard for me, as I really struggled with motivation to like train alone at home when everything was uncertain.
I mean, it's kind of like, for example, people who run and they go do marathons, or like the cyclists. You know how if they go in the full with all the group, you can do probably like 100 miles.
So much more.
But when they run by themselves, yes, they get faster, but they get tired later. Eventually, the whole group is gonna catch up.
Yeah. Yep.
Right?
And it's like
that energy.
It is. It's crazy how much it pushes me through. And I feel like I'm kind of drifting off here, but like something else that I really love about just taking a class every day is, and you probably know this taking class with me by now, but I'm very vocal. Like I snap for people. I say things. I'm very much like, if someone does something and I'm like, that was beautiful, like I go and I tell them, or I say something to them. And I feel like I do that for them, but also myself, because it like makes me, it helps me get through, but also it inspires me in the moment. And then I'm like, great, this next pass through on this turn combination, I'm gonna try to apply what I just saw them do. And like that's the cool part about just like being in person and dancing with other people, is
I like that.
I get to like actively see those things happen. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like people are, there's obviously classroom etiquette when you're younger, and as you get older, depending on the company and things like that, there's different environmental factors
depending on a lot of
on
things.
The company,
depending on the dancers you're with, depending on things. I feel like I'm more internal when I'm doing ballet class. Like I see everybody, but I'm like in my little bubble in me, because I feel like it's kind of like the time I get to actually think of everything. Because in the rehearsals I'm like, okay, I'm okay, but in the class I'm more like,
see, I feel like it's almost the opposite for me. Class time is like at bar is different for me. I'll usually like be pretty focused on me, myself, and I, because you're kind of isolated at the bar. But as soon as we get into center is when I'm like, I don't know, it just gives me so much energy. I feel like that's why I'm so giggly sometimes in classes too, is because I'm just like trying to get all this energy out of my system. But in rehearsals, that's when I'm like, okay, what's the choreography? What are the counts? What are the things we talked about yesterday? You know?
Yeah.
So it's a bit opposite for me there, but...
Yeah, that's kind of funny. I think it is by the time we have rehearsal, I learn so fast. that I have time to spare. You know what I mean? And that's when I'm like, oh, going all over.
And I'm the opposite. It takes me, I wouldn't say I have become a bit quicker of a learner more recently in the more recent years because I've had to.
You have to.
And you know, you develop those skills
Yes.
as you get older and you dance more in a professional setting. But I still like very much so am one of those people that I have to review something almost, unless it's like, 2 weeks before the show. By then, if I don't know my choreography, like
something is wrong.
something is wrong. But like in the beginning stages of like putting a ballet together, like that first month and a half or so, maybe first 5 weeks, I'm really just dedicated to like knowing what I'm doing so that I'm able to be a good basically team player for those around me and for myself. So
Totally.
yeah.
I wanted to go into something money, because I feel like dancers sometimes don't talk about so much about money.
Yeah.
And like we kind of did a little bit when you said that you were younger, but it's like, how does it feel sometimes to be a ballerina and feel like you cannot cover your minimum expenses? 'Cause I feel like it's the reality of a lot of dancers.
Yes, it is. It's honestly kind of scary sometimes. I feel very lucky that I have family that they don't support me financially, but they have always been there for me, and they're like, this is your dream, if anything does go wrong where you need help, we're here to help you. And that's something that I don't take lightly at all, because I'm very much so, I wish I could ask for help more often, but I'm kind of bad at it.
Yeah.
But it is very stressful, I will say, especially, having to think about where your food's going to come from, and like point shoes expenses and just general dance expenses and like rent and all of these different things. For me, it's very meticulous. I should be better at budgeting, but I am gradually getting better because I have to be.
You have to be.
Because as a dancer, I mean, as you know, you don't make very much money at all, which is why you have to be passionate about it, I feel, in order to get through. And I saw something really good the other day. It was like, if we depend on how we're feeling in the moment, we won't get to where we want to be. So it's like pushing through those days when you're like, I can't I don't want to go to class. I'm exhausted. I feel burnt out. Why am I even doing this? The money's not worth it. You have to separate yourself from your wants and your needs to, like you said, if you want to get somewhere, you have to do things consistently. So when it comes to money, it really is about, are you willing to sacrifice that? Is that something that's genuinely...
It's part of you.
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it is like, and I don't know, when I was younger, when I first got hired with BFAN, I was a little naive. I didn't realize how expensive living was.
Living by yourself.
Exactly. And keep in mind, I was like a baby, 18, literally had graduated high school 3 months prior, and then moved to a city that I had only visited to once, and it was to look at housing. And so I feel like I was pretty naive in the beginning. And as an apprentice, I wasn't making anything. And that's pretty normal, going to a company, and especially if you're younger too, making little to no money is very normal. So when I was 18, 19, I had a separate job. I was a server as well. And oh boy.
That is another life.
It is so difficult. And like, I will say, pat on the back for myself. I'm really proud of myself for getting through that, because the first year that I danced here, I was working 73 hours a week.
It's insane. With
dance plus serving, and barely making enough to
survive.
I made enough to pay rent, but then I was like, what am I going to eat?
Oh, yeah.
And so it's gotten better since then, but it was definitely eye-opening. Yeah. And like, I will be transparent. Like, for example, I'm on food stamps. Like, I use the government assistance for my benefit, and thank God that I do, because
if not, I
wouldn't be able to afford the good food that I'm eating. And
that you need.
That I need.
Because to be able to be an athlete, to be able to have perform and do it at the level that you do, you need to eat good. It's not like you can just be having mac and cheese
or ramen every day.
No,
or
like-
yep.
You can make those sacrifices, but later on you're gonna have way too many health issues,
You're gonna feel it.
and
Yeah.
then it's gonna be worse, and you have to end your career even faster.
Earlier.
or-
Yep. Exactly. And that's why, like, I wish I would have gotten on that more quickly, because I feel like it would have been beneficial. But I was young. They don't teach you those
No,
things
no.
in school. Like, you know.
Thank God younger, you can kind of like go with it a little bit longer.
Yeah, you can. Well, that's what I mean. Like,
Mhm.
when you're younger, you're way more, you just bounce back way quicker with everything in life. And so, but now I'm like, no, I need all of these things in order to,
Mhm.
like, not only sustain my body, but my mental health. Like, if I don't eat enough every day, I will start to crash.
Yeah, everybody was gonna have
Yeah.
some bigger problems.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I just-
money is definitely
I
a
wish
big thing.
we could find like a way to bring more money into this art.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because sometimes I feel like it's not that I'm comparing ourselves to like runners or football players and all these things, but sometimes it's like we put the same dedication as they do. And like I just wish, I'm not asking to be paid $1 million. I'm just asking for everyone
A living wage.
Yeah, to be able to live, that you don't have to make 3 jobs to be able to go to dance. You know, because I feel like sometimes it's so unfair that these people are sacrificing so much, and they have to end their dreams because they cannot support themselves.
Yes,
Like they cannot eat.
Yes, I get kind of fired up about this as well, because I'm like, you're more of a sports person than I am, and like I definitely see the value in all of these things.
I
Of
get it,
course,
yeah.
whatever life
deserve
path,
the money.
of course, whatever path you're on for life is what the path you're on. And if you are fortunate enough to get hired by a professional, you know, NFL league or
Yeah.
whatever, or something like that, that's insane.
Insane.
Good for you. You
Props
know,
to you, yeah.
props to you. But at the same time, little old me is like, okay, so we are not only an art form, but I would love us to be recognized as athletes at this point in time, because that's who we are, you know, like we're athletes. We just have to put a smile on
Athletes
our
that
face
make
and
art.
make it look effortless, which is, in my opinion, even more difficult.
Yeah, because for example, let's say if I'm gonna run 100 miles, that's very hard, right? Whatever it is, I can make whatever face I want.
Yes,
Like I can
exactly.
just go, like go and do and run, you know, like I can make it.
Yes.
But if you were a professional dancer, professional ballet dancer of any art form, you have to pretend there is nothing, that you can do that in your sleep, and you are so gracious, and you're
Yes, exactly.
You know, so-
Exactly. And it kind of reminds me, it's like that for dancers, and then I feel like for like aerial artists, or like people in the circus, or like in that realm of artistic athleticism crossover, they, you know, similar thing for them. Like
Yes.
you have to be like Iron Man strong in order to do some of those things and still look graceful and beautiful. And I don't know, that's why, taking it back to social media, that's why when I see some of these things on social media, I have to remind myself they have worked so hard
to be able to be in the
to be able to look like that, you know. And so it's this full circle thing that we go through.
Yes. I mean, that's the other thing. I feel like social media is, for example, one of the revenues that we as artists, as dancers, could take to make the money we don't make in the regular job. But at the same time, that also requires a lot more work than people realize. It's not just being yourself and taking a picture.
And some of us don't want to be social media influencers.
People don't want to be. That's another
I
point.
don't,
Yeah,
you
like,
know,
that's
like-
not what you dream of.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like, and for me, like, social media sucks the energy out of me and out of everybody I know. That's just kind of how it is, you know.
Yeah.
We're all, you know, living the same reality in that sense. But that's why I dance, is for the energy. So it's like that give and take. You're right. We can, you know, make a platform for ourselves and put ourselves out there and things like that.
But it doesn't mean you want it to.
Exactly.
I agree. No, that's a good perspective. Because
And it's like relating to like auditions and things like that. Like, I understand that if you're putting yourself on the internet, you know, anyone is there to see it. But part of me is like frustrated by the fact that, like, you know, if a company were to find my social media and look at my social media after I audition for them, or some people, you even have to put your social medias on your resume.
You have to, like, it's part of the things.
I hate that because I'm like, I want to be organized enough to separate my professional life and my personal life. And I've tried that. I made a dance account. I did all that, you know, a while ago. And I just find that I don't use it because it is a lot of effort. And I'm like, I'm just trying to be myself and, you know, put my genuine self out there as not only a dancer, but just a normal person too. And I feel like some people, or like companies, or, you know, people higher up, if they see an Instagram that's not dedication, or just, you know,
I feel like it's not even
your
that.
highlights or
if
whatever.
If they don't see that you have enough followers, they are not going to hire you.
Exactly. And I'm like, seriously?
Yeah.
Like, oh my goodness, like that's where we're at, you know? And like, I don't know how, I haven't really looked into how prevalent that is in like professional dance companies, but for other things like getting hired for commercials, or if you're a Broadway person, or if you're a musical theater person,
forget about it.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter how talented you are.
No, exactly. And that's what drives me crazy is I'm like, I am like an old lady when it comes to technology. I am not very tech savvy. Like, I'm just here for a good time, not a long time. Like, I'm just trying to use my social media to connect with my friends and like, you know, my close-ish circle of people in my life that I'm like, hey, look what I'm doing. But I hate that now I have to think about like, you know,
do I want to promote myself?
Yeah,
Should I do this?
yeah.
Should I do that? Totally. It is so unfair, and it's so interesting because for part of me it's like, yeah, you should have kind of like a little portfolio, and your Instagram will be the perfect way to do it. It's kind of like having your own website, because that's the way for people to be able to hire you, maybe find you and do these things. But the problem becomes when it's not about your art and what you do, is because it becomes about how many followers, how many likes you get, how many people actually are interacting with you.
And like we've talked about this a little bit before, sometimes that depends on the song you use in a reel. It doesn't even matter like about the actual content you're putting out.
Is.
And that's where it gets me a little bit, is I'm like, how do I beat the algorithm, you know, as an artist? Like, I don't know, this is kind of sidetracking, but have you seen on Instagram, there's like this new reel where it's like, I'm so glad that I'm an artist and I get to stand in front of the camera and slowly turn my painting around on this reel to show people. It's a very good example of what we're talking about, where it's like, you can't just post the art anymore. You have to post a face with the art. You have to make a whole, you know, a reel at this point, because that's what's popular right now. And it's kind of just a joke about that, how as artists, we can't just post the art anymore. We have to post ourselves. Like, I don't know, the physical manifestation of what it is.
Yeah. And it is very confusing, to be honest. All of these things.
I'm like, I'm an old lady. I don't know. I'm not tech savvy.
Yeah, but that's kind of what I wanted to do, this new section in this new type of style, because I wanted to spotlight the artists for who they are. Like, I wanted to show them. Like, I wanted to have a real conversation with you and with the artist that's going to be next. You know? Not just being like, gotta say, controlled by this is what we want to see. No, this is what we want to see. Like, I want to see you. I want to talk to you. I want to show how good you are and like what you represent and how good this goes to the world.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I'm sure other people seeing this or hearing this will probably be like, oh, there's someone like me out there. You know, that boo light bulb moment where it's like, I'm not alone. You know, that's
like, I don't need to be.
Those are the things that I search for as an artist as well. Is like not the people that look perfect, you know, but the people that are very like forthcoming and real about who they are. But
and like, I don't think it's anything bad with using the social media and getting followers or whatever. It's great if you have it. Just it's perfect.
If you can do it, do it. Yeah.
But I use it to help, not to make people like
feel bad
worse.
Or yes. And I feel like that's just a natural human thing, is the comparison aspect.
It's gonna happen, unfortunately.
Yep.
I wanted to touch one more thing about is you are an open about your sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
You have always been since I know you.
Yes.
From the beginning. I wanted to know how that's affected you as a ballerina, as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
Like, does have come with things about, like, how can I say this? Having trouble with connecting with other people,
mm-hmm.
or like with directors or with people like being like, oh, I don't want her because she's gonna be into me or something
mm-hmm.
like that. Does you have problems with that? I want to know more about it.
Yes. Oh, so I actually didn't formally, I don't know, I've actually been questioning recently, like, how I identify and things like that. But for now, I'm going to say just generally, I'm a queer dancer. I mostly identify as, like, bisexual or pansexual, so into all of the above. But that being said, it's something that crosses my mind all of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't come out to my family or anybody in my life until my senior year of high school, actually. It was literally 2 weeks before before my last day of senior. Yep, I was like, all right, now's the time, My best friend, like, helped me with all of that and stuff. But in the dance world, it was definitely something that I was very anxious about initially, and I feel that I've become comfortable here and with this company now in a good way. Like, I feel, very accepted and all of those things here. But I will say, like, initially when I first came, the first question that everybody always asks is, do you have a boyfriend? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's totally fine because, not to get too into it, but that's how the patriarchy works.
Yeah,
like,
that's how society has been for millions of years.
Exactly. And so, of course, like, that's not something I will ever get offended by. But as someone who was newly out at the time when I first joined the company and things like that, it was definitely, like, one of those things. And I can't pinpoint any one situation, really. But it was definitely one of those things where I was like, turn bright red for a moment. And I'm like, I wish I didn't have to explain myself,
mm-hmm.
And I know people are always curious and they're like, this, that, and the other, but what does it mean? And all of these things. And I was just like, at that point in my life, I was very much so, like, still processing and, like, coming to terms with myself on things like that. So when people would approach me with things like that, it was immediate, like, bright red. Now I feel a bit more comfortable, expressing those things because it's just who I am.
Who you are.
Yeah. In terms of relating to dance, it's difficult to say because, as you know, there's a lot of gay male dancers
mm-hmm.
in ballet, almost to the point where, like, outsiders almost assume that every male dancer is gay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that also rubs me the wrong way, is that there is the representation there, but not necessarily in the way that it should be represented,
mm-hmm.
And then there is little to no representation for queer women in dance.
I was going to say that.
Or just non-binary people in dance. There is mm-hmm. very little representation. And so that's something that I am still, I don't know, it's very new to me still. I'm still trying to process and, like, find my way through the dance world, because some people are like, like, you should be super proud about this and, like, be super loud and out and, proud about who you are and what you do. But it's kind of hard in the dance world because, and it's nobody's fault, but lots of, if not all, ballets are
male and woman.
Yeah, pretty much. It's like your classic man falls in love with the woman, or the woman mm-hmm. falls in love with the man, or whatever, which is great and fine, and part of me relates to that, but the other part of me has always longed for, like, a storyline where it's
you relate
more
to the
relatable.
Love, but you don't relate to the people who are representing the love.
Exactly. And, like, I guess it's just more of, like, I've seen that. We've all seen that story. Yeah, we've all seen that story a million times. But for me, I'm like, okay, I'm ready to, like, see something else now and maybe be a part of something else now that actually represents who I am. A side tangent to all of this, when I was 18, 17, 18, and like coming to terms with all of this. I danced at Ballet, Idaho with the academy there. And my best friend, Antonio, we still talk all of the time. They go by Tony now. Recently just came out as they, them. But Tony and I, growing up, we grew up together. We danced together for like forever, you know, one of my best friends. But it used to be a thing where I would come to them for everything, and Tony was like my rock and my person. And so when I started questioning my sexuality, especially in the dance world, I was like, okay, I think this is someone that I can like talk to and trust about this, because it's just like, you know, growing up, you're already so uncomfortable with who you are, and you're going through all of these things. And so as a young queer person,
something else.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, all right, well, like, nobody is going to assume that I am queer. And that was the other thing, is like, having your separate life at high school during the day was so bizarre for me, because the way that people perceived me was very much this, like,
the ballerina,
prim, proper, you know, doesn't cuss, doesn't make any mistakes, has good grades, you know, all of these things. And so it was difficult for me to get past that, because I was like, well, this is what people are projecting onto me, so that's who I should be.
You make a wrong idea of who you are.
Exactly. And it was very confusing. And so when I finally had these thoughts, I was like, okay, Tony is someone I trust. Tony is someone I can talk to. And I came out to them. I think they were probably the first or second person I ever came out to. And it became a thing where every day after class we would walk to our cars out in the parking lot across the street from the studio, and we would spend like 30 minutes just talking about things and just, you know, dissecting the things from the day, whether it had to do with just life or our sexuality or whatever. But when I finally came out to them, they kind of had a little bit of a breakdown themselves. And it's a joke now, but at the time it was a whole big thing. But they were like, Jenavieve, you're making me question myself. You're making me question. It's your fault. Like, you're the one who's making me question these things. And like almost became angry with me for finally identifying with my true self.
Letting themselves be themselves.
Exactly. And so when that happened, it's funny now, but at the time I was like, oh no. Like, because it was one of those things, like, I think I felt comfortable with them because I knew, you know, and I think they felt comfortable with me because they knew. And it was just one of those things, they weren't ready yet, and I was. And so me coming to terms with that almost triggered something in them. And it was just a funny little, you know, it's funny now, but in the moment it was like, oh my gosh, Tony was like, I don't know who I am anymore. What's going on? Like, Jenavieve, it's all your fault. And, you know, now we're besties, and we have this really incredible bond. Yeah, exactly. We have this like very unique bond, especially both as dancers. And like, he's a dancer of color. He's a person of color, you know. And so am I like especially in Idaho, like, and I'm not even that brown. Like, I'm half Mexican, you know. But it's really sad that the representation for darker people is so little that I was considered different, you know. And that's something I had to come to terms with. So we related on that, but also just like this funny little queer journey together. So it's good to have a friend like that growing up.
It's always good to have the people that support you.
Exactly.
Because without them,
no matter what,
everybody can go in such a dark route. Because it's so easily, because society is so mean. Like, everything that happens and everything they told you is how it's supposed to be, and that's not true.
Exactly.
You know, so like, that person that is there for you, please, like, take care of them, because they are gonna be with you no matter what.
And for a long time. And we talk to each other all the time about situations and just things we experience and in and out of the studio. But like, of course, it's very relatable to both be dancers.
Totally.
I will say, relating to all of that, like I said in the beginning, I am pretty comfortable here in the best way possible. Like, I feel very accepted, and it's not a whole thing here. I have definitely thought about and do think about what it would be like to go somewhere else and how I would go about telling people, because that's the thing. Is I don't have to tell people, but it'll come up one way or another. And part of me is like, I just don't want to ever have to go through that again. Yeah, so I'm kind of just like, I don't know. It's annoying having to constantly come out, but also it's one of those things where I think if I were to go anywhere else, I would definitely have to evaluate the situation, the company, the people, the directors.
How is that affected?
Not only for, it's less safety is a whole thing. It's less about safety for me, but just more about how I'm being perceived. I hate the thought of being perceived a certain way, or just
putting you in a box without even know who you are.
Exactly.
And I think hopefully this will change eventually in the recent years, when all kind of like, how do you say, when the latter moves, like the people who are right now dancers become directors and teachers. Maybe that was gonna change that, but who knows? Exactly. I hate that it's a thing that people have to think about when it shouldn't. It should be like, are you a great dancer? Are you a fit for my company? Come in.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Because everybody's not a fit for every company, regardless of whatever. But no, it's annoying that it has to be like that. The other thing that I wanted to say, that it goes back to the other thing, I feel like right now also you could have the opportunity to also bring that new piece of ballet, bring that new piece of art, representing how you feel, or representing what you think love is.
I agree with that too. I think about that quite a bit. I just don't know how to bring that to fruition, bring it forth into my life. I think eventually, I don't know, I've always had ideas and stuff. Something will come about, whether it be choreography or a piece, or I don't know, joining a company does more work like that, or just creating my own thing that creates more work like that. But I've definitely considered that, and something will probably come out of that. I would love that to be the case.
Totally. I'm pretty sure that everybody who's listening will want to see that as well.
I would love to. And this is, if you don't mind me adding, this is something else I've been thinking about a little bit lately, and I think I've mentioned this to you before. Recently, I've been thinking about visually the type of dancers that companies hire and why that is. And as you know, there's the whole thing where it's unfortunately, a lot of people are hired because of their size, because of the way they look, because of things they cannot control. And that's a discussion for another day. But relating to that, I am a tattoo fanatic. And I just thought I would mention this because nobody's really talked about this before. I've never heard anybody talk about this before in the ballet world anyways.
Even though a lot of dancers are tattooed.
Yes, a lot are. And I feel like I haven't seen that representation as much as I would like to. In the representation I have seen, it's been more men that have been tattooed.
Usually it's more men than women, I agree.
And I think it's because obviously there are less men or less male dancers, and so there is a point I will say, if you are incredible, you're incredible. You're gonna get hired, no matter what. But there's recently been these thoughts that have been going through my mind where I'm like, why can I not
have a full sleeve?
Well, why can't I put art on my body and also create art with my body? I guess is my thing. I don't know. I just think I find beauty in so many different avenues. I'm also a painter too. I think some people kind of know that. I paint, I draw, I do music too. I sing sometimes, not really well, but I like to consider myself just generally an artist rather than just a dancer, because I feel like I've been pigeonholed into that my whole life, even though it is currently the forefront of my life right now. It's definitely just an aspect of who I am, a very big one, but just an avenue. But recently we talked about this. I was like, I really want to get a full back piece. And I know that it's not realistic, and it's definitely not something that I will be doing anytime soon. A, because of money. We talked about that
Yes,
one.
very expensive.
And B, because it's not very realistic for me, especially as a ballet dancer. Like, I could see maybe if I...
As a modern, more contemporary dancer, that could have part of it, but yeah.
Yeah, or even like a circus person or, you know, an aerial artist or whatever. But I don't want to be the first person to try to break through that boundary, but I would love to see more representation there too.
That's good. But at the same time, it makes me just think about... We have already seen Giselle, Swan Lake, everything the way it is. And I'm sure there is always going to be 1 or 2 or 3 companies that are always going to do it like how it was meant to be, which is okay because they are trying to preserve that style.
Yeah.
And that should be preserved.
There's
how
beauty in that. Yeah.
How, for example, like operas dying and all these things because nobody wants to do it. But so there is always going to be somebody to do it. But I feel like right now we could also find beauty in having Giselle with a huge sleeve, or like having, you know, Odile with a huge wings tattooing her back. I would love to see it.
I would love to see it. And
it might not be correct, you know, depending. But why not? Like, you're always gonna have somebody that is gonna do it the way you wanna see it. Why we don't have somebody that is gonna do it the way I wanna see it?
Well, exactly. That's the thing, is I feel like there's so much repetition in the dance world. It's like being able to find a way to separate yourself should be more sought after, and I think it is in certain tenses. But like looking different is something that is very controversial, I feel, in the dance world, and is something that I think about constantly. And there's also like the reason I keep my hair long and things like that. And that relates back to like queer identity as a dancer. Like honestly, if I could, and I could, like I know that it's my life, I can do whatever I want, but I don't feel that it would be appropriate to like chop my hair off, cut my hair really short because of the field I'm in, you know? And that might just be me and my perceptions, and
I think it's what society has made you think of it.
Exactly.
Because I feel like, for example, where we are, I feel like you could totally do it. Because there is wigs, there is other forms, and I feel like that's the thing that we also are forgetting, that there is so much other things that you can do to make me fulfill the role, how an actor will do. Because, for example, let's say I'm gonna play, I don't know, the Joker. I will have to put up makeup and I will have to
change your hair, do a wig, do a different costume.
That doesn't mean that I'm not representing myself. I'm just doing the character that I need to represent for this part of the moment.
Exactly.
I will jump into something else later. So.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I think, and I know, like, that's the thing, is like, realistically, I know that I could do these things because free will, you know, or whatever. But also, like, here, it's very, like, do what you need to do to be happy. You know, in this company specifically, I feel like it's pretty lenient when it comes to things like that. But it's just the general fear of, like, not being able to get hired in the future, or, you know, you're like what you said earlier, being put in a box. And I'm like,
put in a box because
I'm trying to break out of the box. I'm trying to do the opposite, you know. So, and not for any particular reason, but just because that's genuinely who I am and who I would like to see myself as, rather than how they see me, I guess.
Yeah.
Talking about, I guess, being perceived by your higher ups versus, and I like I said, like, I totally understand someone having a vision, and like, there's always a time and a place for things, and I definitely respect that, and I see it,
it's
I understand it, of course, yeah, and that's, you know, a part of being a dancer is knowing that you're going in to perform someone else's vision and make it come to light, you know, which is part of our job. So, yeah.
To finish, what do you feel like you would like to do with yourself later? I don't know if I said that right. You know, like, would you want to be a director? Would you want to be a choreographer? Would you want to just be a teacher? Like, how would you see yourself 15, 20 years from now?
Yes. So this has actually changed recently. I'm constantly thinking about the things I would like to do. I have a few different versions of myself that I would like to eventually get to. Right now, am most leaning towards continuing being like an artist of some sort. I mentioned like aerial arts and stuff like that quite a bit because that's something that I've been starting to get into quite a bit. And being able to take because I don't think I want to stop moving is the thing. And like, don't get me wrong, I love teaching, but I don't know, I feel I am a good teacher and I bring value to a classroom, but I think I'll always be a performer. Like, I love performing for people and being able to create art and use my body for things. Like, it's one of my favorite things. But I think most recently I want to get into anything from like aerial arts so that I could get hired with like a circus act or like, I don't know, or even like something along the lines of like Momix in Seattle, where it's like contemporary ballet, modern, mixed with like different aerial acts.
Like
and
a full...
It's like just movements in general, movement
kind of like
art.
a Cirque du Soleil type of style.
Exactly, yeah. So I don't necessarily want to, I don't know where that will take me, but like I said earlier with like the tap dancing and stuff like that, I kind of want to be good at everything. A little bit of everything. Yeah, because I find a lot of value in that, and also it helps me not to get bored with certain things. Like
Makes
finding
sense.
new challenges and being able to use my body in different ways is really rewarding. So I think that's an idea for now, is I just want to continue moving. I don't know exactly where that will take me, whether it'll be like a dance company or something completely unrelated, but I know that I want to continue using my body for something. Later on in life, I don't know, maybe a scientist of some sort. I don't know. We'll see where my college education gets me.
Yeah. Where are you studying? Psychology?
No. So right now I'm just doing my prerequisites. Okay. Yeah. So I'm just getting my like basic math, English, all those classes out of the way. I actually don't know what
we were talking about psychology once, right?
I was taking a psychology class. Yeah. As one of my prereqs. But I'm very interested in... I don't know, it changes all the time.
That's fair.
I've always been interested in I've always kind of pictured myself after I've danced. And I feel like a lot of dancers take this route actually, but to like end up as like someone to work with like conserving forests or just doing something outside, because I feel like as a dancer you're always inside, and once again relating back to being in front of a mirror all day, being somewhere where I literally don't have to care what I look like or or
where you're
any
aware
of those.
of the surroundings but not yourself.
Exactly. And I can take in the outside beauty rather than having to be the thing projecting that. So I think when my body is long gone and I've replaced my knees and all those things, I would love to do something relating to just being outside. So
that is exciting. I like it that you didn't took like, I'm going to be a choreographer, I'm going to be this, even though I believe that you could be a great choreographer.
I used to want to be a choreographer really bad. And I don't know, Gustavo, don't get me thinking about that again.
Again, because how I think of people is not how they are, and that's what I wanted to again do this podcast and these things, because I wanted to show who they really are and know what the people makes them believe they are, who they are.
Yeah.
So I like that you didn't say any of those things.
Yeah, and it's definitely like something that's crossed my mind when I was younger, and when I was first really like I said, when I was first introduced to contemporary, it really did take over my brain in the best way possible for a few years, and like was something that I was very focused on. I feel like I was a little more spontaneous when I was a little younger, and things would just come out a little more naturally, and I was able to just like, relating to choreography specifically, just like flow a bit and then come up with things bit by bit. I'm a little rusty now, but I would love to I think
you can combine
that's not the end goal, but yes, exactly. I, like I said, want to be able to do a whole bunch of different things, whether that is me being the person at the front of the room directing people and creating art on other people, or creating art on myself, or being a part of a bigger project that someone else is creating. I want to do it all.
And that's fine. This makes me think how we talk about also at the same beginning of this thing, that nothing is linear. I really like somebody says that we are the middle of a circle. So it doesn't matter which way you take, you always gonna end up reaching the end of the circle as long as you're taking the steps. So it doesn't matter the path. You are just learning little things that are gonna make you better for what your end goal is. So when you reach this first circle, you're gonna have a bigger circle, and it doesn't matter which path you take. You are just gaining new resourcefulness,
or like new skills.
New
and stuff
skills,
like
exactly.
that.
You're getting
Yeah.
new skills every single time. That is gonna get you
Yes.
closer and closer to the big picture that you're dreaming of.
And that's another thing that I still am quite intimidated about, because, life is this whole big thing and yada yada. But I feel like I kind of have a better grip on the fact that everything I do doesn't necessarily need to be working towards one specific goal, but it will aid me in the long run in whatever I end up doing, because I will have a unique set of skills here and a unique set of skills here, So even if I don't see the value in something right now, like,
Everything
I
has
know
value.
for a fact that it'll come back and help me in some way, in the future.
Totally.
So, yeah.
I totally agree with that. So Genevieve, thank you so much for being here. Thank you
Yes,
so
of
much for being the
course.
first guest.
Yes, thank you for letting me ramble about this weird passion.
No,
of
it's great.
ours.
And this is what we want to do, And if you guys want to see more of her, like her actual dancing or her actual person, because we don't only have to do dancing. Please check the next video, or if you guys are listening, please check us on YouTube or Instagram or wherever we're gonna put this, and then you can see her. So thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you for coming.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.